My experience with Yongnuo lenses was extremely positive, but I had to wonder what happened to this brand over the last few years that they ended up being overtaken by other Chinese brands. Alright, welcome back to the channel. I'm Steven from X-Kurani Photos. I'm currently attending an anime and cosplay convention called Animangaki 2025, which is taking place in Mines Convention Center at Kuala Lumpur between 22nd to 24th of August 2025. And despite this being an anime convention, cosplay photography is a big thing. And what really surprised me this time around is that a lot of camera product brands showed up. And right behind me, Yongnuo is here. Is this like the first time? I'm not sure, but I've never seen them here in any anime conventions before. And they have a bunch of lenses where anyone can try. And I will be testing those lenses on a Nikon ZF. Yes, only 24 megapixels, but I mean, that is more than enough for an average hobbyist. And now we are back in my studio over here. I think it is a lot easier for me to talk about my mini experience handling Yongnuo lenses at the event earlier. That was Animangaki 2025, an anime and cosplay convention. And as we all know by today, cosplay photography is a very popular form of portrait photography. And Canon had a big showing, a big appearance at the event. But what surprised me was Yongnuo showing up with lenses for us to try. We get to use it on the spot. Unfortunately for us Nikon Z mounts users, there was exactly 3 lenses available for full frame, the usual 35, 50 and 85mm. Yeah, I would love to see more variety, to be honest. So that event was loud, a lot of people, and there was even copyrighted music playing in the background, so I did not want to risk it. I would be better off discussing the rest over here in my studio while showing you guys a few video clips from the event as we go on. So, Yongnuo as a third-party brand from China, I think they are the oldest Chinese lens brand out there, way older than Viltrox. And they began around 10 years ago by knocking off Canon lenses, the EF 51.8, the Nifty 50, and even the 35 f2. Those lenses were Canon lenses, but the patents had expired, so they created knockoffs, the same exact optical formula, but without Canon's coatings. They were not good with coatings. In fact, most Chinese brands are not good with lens coatings, which is why we see more color fringing in Chinese lenses in general. So those knockoff lenses, they were selling for 50, 80 bucks each, and I had experience shooting with the 50 1.8, which was like $50. It was okay, but it flashed like crazy. Those were the days the lens was pretty bad. It felt like a plastic toy that would self-destruct anytime, even though you never dropped it. So fast forward to today in year 2025, my experience with their trio of 35, 50 and 85 prime lenses for full frame, in my case the Nikon Z version, I believe it is called DF-DSM. If you see a Yongnuo lens with the alphabets DA, DSM, DA is APS-C, DF is full frame, right? So 35, 50 and 85 DF, DSM lenses over there, they felt remarkably similar to Nikon's S-line lenses. Round buttons on it, round function buttons. The design language is so similar to Nikon S-line lenses somehow, but the difference was that the lens was entirely built from metal. With Nikon S-line, the rear half of the lens is metal, but the front half is high quality plastic. But in the case of Yongnuo, it was fully metal built. It feels pretty solid. The improvement in build quality is astounding. It was nothing like the plastic fantastic toys that I used to touch 7-8 years ago. So build quality is great, but if there is one complaint I have, specifically with the 35mm f2, was that the focus ring was kinda loose, way too loose to my liking. I'm not sure if it was designed that way. It feels like playing with the wheels of a toy car. You just use one single finger and flip it like that, and then the ring would turn very easily, something like that. That is me exaggerating things a bit, but long story short, too smooth, too loose to my liking. Yeah, I want a bit more resistance because it almost feels like the focus ring is broken or not connected to the internals of the lens, but it is actually working, just that it was so loose and I did not like the feeling. Of course, I wouldn't discount the possibility that the lens has been abused so many times by different people because, yeah, those were test units for people to try, so that could be a possibility. I wouldn't discount that, but the 35mm was a bit very loose, but it does not feel that way on the 85 or the 50mm lens. So I'm not sure what is going on with the focus ring or the function ring. Unfortunately, when I was testing out their lenses, I was a bit too early. I was there at 10:30 a.m. or so, barely half an hour after the event opened their doors. I don't want to be there at 2 or 3 p.m. in the afternoon because the crowd would become way too heavy and difficult to manage. But being there too early also means that they are not quite ready yet. They're supposed to have models and cosplayers on standby for us to photograph and test their lenses on. The models, the cosplayers were not there yet. So all I could do when I tested the lenses was to point it at the crowd or at the lady in front of me who is manning the booth. Even those few photographs I took alone are enough to tell me what those Yongnuo lenses are like. I was pretty surprised. I mean, I've heard good things about Yongnuo's latest lenses, but getting to try them firsthand, the AF was snappy. It feels like first-party lens. First-party STM lenses to be exact, like Nikon's 40f2 for example, Nikon's cheaper S-line lenses like 51.8s. Yeah, it feels very similar. The same AF system, the same AF motor after all, STM, which is more than good enough, very snappy, very quick to lock on focus. And then the most surprising part is the image quality. Granted, I'm not shooting in high contrast areas. I couldn't check for things like chromatic aberration or color fringing. But the few photographs I got with this lens, they are very clinical when it comes to rendering. It reminds me of Sigma Art or even some of Nikon's S-line lenses. The out of focus areas, the bokeh is very smooth, very pleasing to look at. Meanwhile, the parts that are in focus, they are incredibly sharp. And it got me thinking, how far has Yongnuo came in the past 8 or 10 years? Their first prime lenses, which were a rip-off of Canon, they were pretty terrible, and now they're making stuff like that. So the image quality was impressive. But unfortunately, there are a few other things about lenses which I couldn't test. Color fringing is one of them because it is indoor lighting and there are no high contrast stuff to photograph. But that is fine. That short experience alone tells me a lot about what the latest Yongnuo lenses are like. And then way later on, after I was done testing the 3 focal lengths, 35, 50 and 85, it kind of reinforced my preference, my opinion of 50mm being the best focal length, at least in events, because 35mm feels a little bit too short, and when I'm photographing people, sometimes I feel like I'm getting uncomfortably close to the main subject, to the cosplayer I'm photographing. Meanwhile, 85 is a bit too tight. I need to step back a lot, and sometimes that is impossible in a crowded event. So 50mm feels just nice. Yeah. And if there's one lens that impressed me the most, it wasn't the 35, the 50, or the 85. It was a lens that does not exist for Nikon Z mount yet. At least at the time of publishing this video, no Nikon Z versions yet, only Sony E-mount. And it is not even a full frame lens. It is the 11mm f1.8. So the build quality of that lens, it reminded me of Sigma, their I series, you know, those really beautiful lenses with clicky aperture rings. That Yongnuo had that. That Yongnuo has a clicky aperture ring that is so satisfying to turn. Click, 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 click. When you turn the aperture ring, it felt like using a quality lens. And you can click or declick the aperture ring. There is a switch on the side. Tiny 11 1.8. And that lens can be controlled via a separate remote control. For people who film themselves and then they want to control the focus, they can use a remote control. Not sure why you would want to do that, but you can buy the remote control separately. That 11 1.8, that is a lens which I really wish comes to Nikon Z mount, because that would be a perfect landscape astrophotography, and even vlogging lens. Yeah, vlogging. Because, Nikon Z so far, Z50 Mark II or Z30 or ZFC, doesn't matter which model, Nikon crop sensor models, they don't have any IBs. So you need to rely on digital stabilization, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Digital step can be good if used correctly. So the way to use digital stabilization is to combine it with a lens that is very wide, so that after you crop in, the video is still wide enough, you won't have your face filling up the entire video. So that focal length of 11mm is ideal. And that lens is also smaller than the Viltrox 13 1.4, for example, way smaller and lighter. So among the lenses they had on display over there, the negative of it, the bad things about it is that they are the standard focal lengths, 35, 50, 85, and then for APS-C, that will be 23, 33, 56, yeah. Boring focal lengths or common focal lengths, I would call. So that really made the 11mm really stand out. And we need that for Nikon Z. In case you guys are watching this, any one of you from Yongnuo, bring the 11 1.8 to Nikon Z. Yes, Z50 Mark II users would be very pleased with it. On day 2, I got to photograph a cosplayer, Eve from Stellar Blade. I mean, it is a very popular computer game at the moment. It is a console game, was ported over to PC, became a best seller. For obvious reasons, the main character is hot, the game character is sexy. So yeah, I saw a really good cosplayer of Eve from Stellar Blade. I had to photograph it, but I wasn't using a Yongnuo lens. Someone else was using it. So I went back to my good old Nikon 40mm f2. I would love to bring my 51.2S, but that lens is heavy. Yeah, I would bring it to Comic Fiesta in December, but that event in August, Animangaki, I wanted to keep things light. So I only had the 40f2 with me, but hey, I got some nice photographs of that cosplayer. Yeah. So this is my short experience with Yongnuo lenses. It wasn't much, but it told me a lot about how much things has progressed in the last 8 or 10 years with this brand Yongnuo, which used to be looked down upon by everyone. And I also had to wonder what happened, because Yongnuo is probably the oldest and the most experienced Chinese lens manufacturer when it comes to autofocus stuff, but they somewhat fell behind. They are not as prominent, not as famous as Viltrox today. They are not making stuff like f1.2 full frame, which Viltrox has started doing. And then there are even rumors of Viltrox coming out with zoom lenses starting next year, and I simply don't see Yongnuo doing that anytime soon. What Yongnuo has been doing is that they come up with 35, 50, 85mm lenses, and after they are done, yeah, they go back to recycling them, a Mark II, an improved version, they call it the Pro version or whatever, something like that. And now Yongnuo even has an art version of the APS-C lenses. Why would they do that? So I hope that this video is a bit insightful or helpful for those of you considering Yongnuo lenses. It is not a fully detailed review, but my experiences so far, very positive. Yeah, they're making great stuff. So until then, if you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like and subscribe to this channel for more content like this. Camera stuff, lenses, photography stuff, and help this channel grow. Yeah. Until then, thanks for watching and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.